Context for Week 1 discussion Forum 1.1 on the types of change. This is based on your reading in Anderson chapter 3. My concern always is that by the end of this course, you will be able to distinguish among the three types of change. And as you're working on your project, understand that the direction we're moving in this class is with one particular type of change, and it's important that you not get tripped up on that. The first type of change talked about by the Andersons is developmental change. Developmental change is simply a gradual enhancement of a particular state. It's a change. And there is some work that goes along with it, but it's not major. And generally, it's not a lot of work for us to deal with it. An example of developmental change is when you get that little message on your iPhone that says it's time to upgrade, or on your computer that's saying that it's time for Windows to upgrade your system, and all of a sudden you find out that things aren't working the same way they were before. Sometimes what happens with me is I call my son-in-law and he takes over my computer with this program, even though he's in Austin, and he kind of shows me how to work things out, but most of the time I can figure it out myself. There may be a little bit of training or some problem solving needed. And we're constantly needing to go through developmental changes with our systems, with our structures, with our policies, with our procedures, or we fall behind in our organizations. That's one type of change. The second type of change is transitional change. And transitional change is clear. I mean, we know that we need to change, and we are moving from one thing to another thing. An example given in the textbook of this is the change from paper record keeping to electronic record keeping. That's happened in our hospitals, in medical organizations, and it's taken quite a bit of effort. Transitional change is required through project management. Generally, there's somebody in IT that's in charge of the change, that's working with people and other areas of the organization, and there's a budget involved, and there are key players that are involved, and you figure out the scope of the project, and you think about, okay, how are we going to get from point A to point B? How are we going to carry out this change and make sure that we're implementing it adequately and appropriately within a particular period of time? And there are challenges with that. Sometimes there are challenges in terms of training and problem solving, but also there's budgetary issues involved. There's staff issues involved. There's sometimes managing of the way people respond to the change. How do we deal with the anger? Because anger is such a natural part of making these kinds of changes, and work with people to get them on board. Getting buy-in and so forth is a big part of transitional change. One of the problems that we often have in this class is that people say yes, they understand the difference between transitional and transformational change, but when they're working on transformational initiatives, they fall back into managing it with transitional approaches or mindsets. So let's talk about transformational change for a minute. Transformational change is when you go from not just doing things one way to doing things another way, but it's a complete change in culture and in mindset that's involved in getting there. One that I've been thinking about lately has to do with Congress. It seems like a very silly thing, but Congress, after all these hundreds of years, had to change a policy on attire. They had to allow the wearing of hats or headgear because there are Muslim women serving in Congress now that need to wear the hijab. That's a transformational change. I mean, how long has it taken for equal rights and the women's movement to have brought about that particular change. A gay governor in the state of Colorado, that's a transformational change that's taken place. It's not managed through timelines and budgets. It takes time and mindset and culture and behavior to change. Another one that I think is kind of creeping up on us. We've been talking about the change from gasoline fuel cars to electronic cars. I think that's a transitional change. We're going to have to figure that out. The transformational change that we're not talking about so much is that many people are moving away from using cars altogether. That's the transformational change. The move to electronic vehicles is not transformational. It's transitional. The move away from cars is a change in lifestyle. People don't want the expenses. They don't want to be burdened with the insurance and car repairs and parking, particularly in urban areas, and with changes in transportation that include things like Divvy bikes and Lyft and Uber and so forth. More and more people are finding that that together with public transportation is a lifestyle choice and a change of how we want to use our money, particularly knowing that money is shorter than it used to be to spend on things like cars and homes. So that's a very brief context. Your forum 1.1 is about a transformational change and discussing that and explaining why, using your reading, why it's not a transitional change or a developmental change. Hope this has helped, and I look forward to being involved in the discussions this week. That's it for week 1.